Hey everyone, and Merry Christmas! Welcome to this festive tech calendar session. I am your host, Ahmed. So, a little bit about myself. I'm a cloud consultant and a network architect. I've been in the industry for more than 15 years now. I blog on my website, iamax.com. I also have got my own YouTube channel with the handle of iamax. And of course, I'm on Twitter with Ahmed Muhi 01. I want to also start with a big thank you to Gregor and Richard for creating this amazing tech event and for allowing us to be part of this. So thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it, and happy Christmas. So to start, I will be talking today about understanding network security group and Azure Application Security Group. So before we do that, we need to understand a little bit about how does network connectivity work within Microsoft Azure virtual networks before we understand the type of security that the network security group and the application security group will allow us to provide to our resources. So the first thing, which is all that you need to know, that all virtual machines or like all resources within a virtual network by default would be able to talk to each other. So for example, we've got here a virtual network with two subnets, subnet 1 and subnet 2. And in subnet 1, we have two VMs, VM1 and 2, and VM3, and of course with their attached network interface cards. All those VMs, VM1, 2, and 3, will be able to talk to each other by default without any configuration on your behalf. As soon as you create the VNet and you create the subnets within that VNet, any resources will be able to talk to each other, no configuration needed. The other thing that you need to be aware of, which is the internet connectivity. So all resources by default will be able to reach the internet when provisioned within a virtual network. This default behavior is actually being changed now by Microsoft. So I believe in 2025, the default would be actually disabled internet connectivity would be the default behavior. But as of now, when you create a resource group, when you create a resource in a VNet, you need to be aware that that virtual machine or resource would have internet connectivity, would be able to reach the internet by default. So maybe you need to work on that if you don't want to allow this behavior. The other concept that I want to explain today, which is the concept of an inbound traffic and an outbound traffic. And this is important for us because we will use that later on, as you will see. So for the purpose of a virtual network, inbound traffic is the traffic coming in from the internet toward your resources in a virtual network, and outbound traffic is the traffic going out of your resources towards the internet. So that's an important distinction that we need to have for us to understand when we create security rule later on, that we need to decide which traffic, or sorry, which direction, and actually, yes, which traffic it's going to apply to. So if you create an inbound security rule, it will be applied to traffic coming in from the internet toward your VMs or resources. If you create an outbound security rule, it would be used for traffic going out of your resources or VMs toward the internet. So without further ado, let's jump into what is a network security group, or an Azure network security group. So a network security group is like, it's a basic virtual firewall allowing you to have basic traffic filtering based on TCP and UDP port. It provides you with the basic or bare minimum, I should say, of network security, and it is very straightforward and easy to understand. The other thing that I want you to know about the network security group is that a network security group could be assigned to a whole subnet, and when it's assigned to a subnet, it will be applied to all workloads on within that subnet. So for example, for our network security group 1, we assigned it to the subnet 1, and as a result, you'll have virtual machine 1 and 2 following, or like be have applied whatever security rule that you've got in network security group 1. It will be applied on those two VMs. And in this case, again, here we are using the um, network security group for subnet 2, and that would also apply for for resources within subnet 2, which in this case is just VM3. The other thing that the other resource that you could attach your or associate your network security group with is the network interface card of a virtual machine. So for in this case, we've got another network security group, which is NSG2. We have associated NSG2 with the network interface card of VM2 and VM3. So now whatever security rule within NSG2 would only be applied to VM2 and VM3 and not VM1 because it is associated with those network interface cards. So you could associate a network security group with multiple subnet, as we could see here, and you could assign the same network security group to multiple network interface cards. But what you cannot do is that have one network interface card have more than one NSG applied to it. Sorry, not applied, associated with it. And for each subnet have more than one network security group associated with it. This will, of course, be much easier to understand later on when we'll see that when we associate a network security group to a subnet, that will be the only network security group. When we associate a network security group with a network interface card, again, that would be the only one associated to that network interface card. So the other concept that is might be a little bit confusing at the start, but the concept is a network security group effective rule. So you remember we just said that each network security group could only be assigned, sorry, each subnet could only have one NSG, and each network interface card could only have one NSG associated with it. But in this case, if you check VM2, you could see that there are actually two NSG in effect here. And even though that we've got two NSG, we are only assigning one NSG with the network interface card for VM2, which is NSG2. And because VM2 is actually also part of the subnet 1, whatever security rule you've got in NSG1 would be applied to it. So to understand that, Microsoft created what is called an effective security rule. What that technically means, if you want to permit a traffic, in this case, for example, remote desktop protocol, RDP, you would have to explicitly allow it in both NSGs applied to a resource. So for us to allow RDP to reach our VM2, we need to create a policy rule saying allow RDP within network security group 1, and then another policy rule saying allow RDP within network security group. Only then you will be able to actually reach VM2. So the first thing that you need to be aware of is that to allow traffic to a specific resource, you would have to allow it through each network security group that will be applied to that resource. And the other thing here is that it's more of a best practice. So try to assign the general rule or the least restrictive rules to the network security group assigned to a subnet. So, for example, if you want to allow ICMP to all resources within a subnet, then put it in the NSG1. You want to allow RDP, again, you put it in NSG1. But if you want to block ICMP, which is the ping, if you want to block ICMP protocol, assign it to the network security group closest to the resource that you want to protect. So if you've got a sensitive resource here in VM2 and you don't want this resource to be reached by ping or ICMP, you have to block that protocol within network security group 2. So what happens here is that network security group will be allowing ICMP, but when it reaches the network security group 2, it will find out that ICMP is blocked. What would happen here is that RDP will still be allowed, but ICMP will be blocked. Let's now turn our attention to the firewall rules within a network security group to understand it a little bit. What we've got here is that a typical network security group, we've got within it what is called a five-tuple model. What a five-tuple model means, it's what is the name of the the security policy, which is in this case, for example, RDP inbound. What is the TCP, source IP address? In this case, it's any destination IP address, again, any, and then source and destination TCP or UDP port. It is not showing source and destination port here. The protocol type, which is TCP or UDP. So if you want to allow a specific a specific type of traffic, you need to decide what is the source IP, destination IP, what is the source TCP or UDP port, and destination TCP or UDP port. Decide on the type of traffic, whether it's a TCP, UDP, and sometimes ICMP. And then finally, you have to decide the action. So what is it that you try? What is the action here? So once a traffic is matched with the source destination IP, source destination port, TCP port, what are you going to do? In this case, you would say either allow or deny. The other important thing that you need to understand about the network security group or firewall rules in general is that something called a priority. In this case, the smaller value, which is 100, is a higher priority, and the higher value, like 65,000, is a lower priority. What does that mean? Priority means which security rule would be evaluated or processed first. So in this case, we've got our RDP, an inbound rule saying like allow RDP to be allow RDP traffic through to our resources. And then in here again, it says like allow VNet traffic, allow Azure load balancing traffic. These are, by the way, called default file rules. You can't change them or delete them. And then finally, you've got a deny all. This policy, it says that if there is no more specific policy that would match this one, it would go through all the way and then deny it. So the first rule that will match the type of traffic, so you've got an RTP coming toward your resources, it will allow it, and then it will stop evaluating or processing other security rules based on the priority. And then finally, before we start to create our first network security group, we'll talk about, again, we just talked about default rules, which cannot be deleted or modified, always have a very high value for priority, which means a low priority. The idea is that Microsoft gave them this low priority, is that so you could easily overrule them. And each for inbound and outbound traffic, you will have always what is called an implicit deny rule, which means if there is no policy specifically allowing this type of traffic to pass through to your resources, this catch-all policy would deny it by default. So, like if all policies before this last one have not matched this type of traffic, so it is it an RDP? No, so it goes to the next one. Is it a VNet inbound traffic? No. Is it a load balancer type of traffic? No. Then it's denied. So unless you want to allow your traffic to a specific type of traffic to your VNet, to your resources within your VNet, then you'd have to create another policy with a higher priority so that it would catch or match the type of traffic you want to allow, and then the action would be allow. Otherwise, it would reach the last one, which is called implicit deny, and then it will be denied. So without further ado, let's create our first network security group, and let's check our scenario here. So Let's talk a little bit about our scenario here. So what do we have? We have a virtual network. So let's first search for our virtual network. So we've got a virtual network VNet1, and within VNet1 we have two subnets, subnet 1 and 2. And we have virtual machines 1 and 2 and 3 that we talked about. 1 and 2 are part of subnet 1, and VM3 is part of subnet 2. If we click on those machines and then click on the network setting, we'll find out there is no security group attached to those machines. So what we want to do here is that we want to allow RDP traffic toward all virtual machines 1 and 2 and 3. We want to block ICMP traffic toward VM2 and 3, but allow it toward VM1. So for that, we'll create two network security groups, and then we'll see how is that going to give us the how is that going to give us the required security that we want to apply to our virtual machines. So let's search for a network security group. So, and let's create our first one. So let's pick a resource group. Let's give it a name. We'll call it NSG1 in this case, and we'll host it in uh, region Australia East. Let's review and create, and then let's create. So our first network security group is now ready. Let's go to the resource. And in here, in the under the setting, you'll see that we've got our inbound security rules. Again, these are the default rules, as you can see, with a very low priority. And then we've got the outbound security rules. We've got which network interface cards this network security group is attached to or associated with. Since we have not associated with any network interface card as of yet, it shows nothing. And again, which subnet it is associated with. So the first thing is that we want to do is that we want to associate it with both subnet 1 and 2, so that it will apply to all our resources, in this case, virtual machine 1, 2, and 3. So let's associate it with subnet 1. So in this case, for our VNet, we've got VNet 1. And for subnet, we'll pick subnet 1 at the start and then associate. And again, we'll do the same thing and now associate it with subnet 2. And with that, we have associated network security group 1 to subnets 1 and 2. If we go back to our virtual machines that we just checked a second ago, before we associated the network security group to those subnets, it didn't have any network security rule associated with it. Just takes a second. And as you can see here, now the first virtual machine has got it's associated, and it tells you it is because it is attached to subnet 1. If we go to VM2, again attached to subnet 1. If we go to VM3, it should say attached to subnet 2. So whatever security rule or policies now we will create within network security group 1 would be applied to all our resources. So what do we want here? We want to allow ICMP and RDP. So let's go back to our network security group. Let's go here. And because it's an inbound traffic, we want to allow traffic from the internet toward our resources. So it's going to be an inbound traffic. So the first thing, let's allow our RDP. To do that, let's create a new rule. Let's click on add. And it's asking me what is the source for this security policy, like it's going to match. So in this case, I'm going just to make it easy, I'm going to make it super easy as in any source and towards any destination, so that we don't have to specifically add the IP address of every single machine. So in this case, we'll say it's from any source IP address and from any source TCP port. So whatever source TCP the RDP is coming from, the service here will pick RDP And what is that going to do is it's going to pick which the destination TCP port. In this case, it's 3389. And as you could see here, it actually picked TCP because its RDP traffic is TCP. We want to allow it, and we will give it a priority of 200. Okay, let's click on add. And as you can see here now, it created a policy saying allow any RDP inbound. So that's the policy, and as you can see, it added it to the top of the list because of the priority, which is very high here, before the default one. And the next step is that now we want to allow the ICMP or allow ping toward our machines. And again, what we'll do is that we'll keep it to the same, whatever, like any source TCP port, destination again, any. For the service, we'll keep it to custom. But what we'll do is that we'll say ICMP, we'll pick ICMP. And what that means is that the type of protocol in this case, it is an ICMP protocol. And as you could see here, it decided to, it gave it the TCP port range of destination of any because of how ICMP actually work. And what I want to do is that I want this rule to be processed first. So like I want to allow the ping first before it actually goes to the RDP. And for that, I'll give it a higher priority, which is 150, and I'll call it allow ping, right? So the action is allow, priority is 150, will be at top of this one. That's the name. We picked ICMP and let's add it. So what's going to happen now is that this network security group has allowed us to, should be able to allow us to ping those machines and also allow us to RDP to those machines. So now that we created those security roles in the network security group, we should be able to ping those virtual machines, and also should be able to RDP to it. So let's first ping the VM1, which is 20.211.83.70, which is good. We can ping it. Let's click on VM2, and now let's try to ping VM2 20.11.0.104, which again we can ping it, and that is good news. And now let's click on VM3, sorry, ping 20.1141 201. And again, we can ping all these three VMs, which is good news. Now, let's see if we are able to RDP to those machines. So this is VM1. And as we can see, we are able to RDP to it, which is good news. Let's try to RDP to VM2. And again, we are able to RDP to it. Again, good news. And then finally, RDP to VM3. So basically what the network security group did is that it allowed ping, it allowed RDP to all these three machines. Now we want to be more specific and protect the sensitive virtual machines VM2 and 3 to block ping or deny ping, but still allow RDP. So for that, we'll create another network security group. We'll associate it this time with the network interface card because it's closer to our resource, and that's what our best practice says, is that if you have a more specific rule, attach it or like associate it with the network interface card to be more specifically applied to that workload. So let's go here and then create network security group 2. So let's click create, assign it the right resource group, give it a name, and then a region, review and create, and then finally we should be able to create. Once the network security group is created, the first thing we'll do is that we need to associate it with the correct network interface card of each respective virtual machine in this case, VM2 and 3. Yep, so our network security group is now ready. Let's click on go to resource. And again, as you can see, it comes with the default security policies. And for the network interface card, there's no network interface card associated with it, and there's no subnet associated with it. So let's click on associate within the network interface card, and then find out which network interface card we want to associate it with. So this is the network interface for VM1, this is for VM2 and VM3. So we'll first associate it with network interface card of VM2. And then next, we'll associate it with the network interface card for VM3. So with that, we have two network interface cards effectively working on VM2 and VM3. So if we go back to our virtual machine, we should be able to see that for VM1, if we click on network resources and network setting, we should be able to see that there is one NSG working on it. And ideally, if we click on VM2, because these things sometimes takes a little bit of time, in this case, it's right away working. We could see that two NSG are effectively working on VM2. One is because it is attached to the network interface card, and one it's because it is attached to the subnet. So in this case, we've got effectively two network security policies working on the same workload. So for us to allow a traffic, specific type of traffic, it needs to be allowed by both. For us to deny traffic, it needs to be denied by NSG2, which is in this case, the one closer to our virtual machine. Let's check VM3 if it's got the same setting. And yes, VM3 also has got two NSGs working on it. When it becomes a little bit difficult sometimes to actually realize which network interface card, which network security group is working on your workload, Microsoft has given us what is called an effective security rule. So if you click on the network interface card of whichever workload you want to check, you want to troubleshoot, and then scroll all the way down, you'll find what is called an effective security rule. If you click on it, it will tell you which network security group, is effectively working on this resource group and what type of rules being applied to it. So in this case, it says this is the network interface card for VM3. We've got two associated NSGs. In a way, it's not associated, but two NSGs that are effectively affecting this network interface card. One because it is attached or associated with the network interface card, and one because it's associated with the subnet. And if you click on the specific name of them, you'll find out what rules are being effectively working on it. In this case, we've got the allow ping and RDP, the one from NSG2. And here we want to add two more rules saying allow RDP but deny ping. So let's go back to network security group, click on NSG2, click on inbound security rule because it's coming from the internet, and let's add a new one. In this case, again from the same source, from any source to any destination, the service will be RDP. Again, allow, give it the priority of 200, and then call it allow RDP. So allow any source, any destination, specifically using protocol TCP 3389, which is the remote desktop protocol. So let's add it. And again, we'll add another rule into this case, deny the ping. So let's add, and then the protocol that we want to pick in this case is ICMP. The action this time is deny, and I want it to be evaluated first or before the RDP. So we'll call it deny ping. So it's working on from any source to any destination, and then the protocol is ICMP, action is denied, priority 150. So now what we effectively did is that we allowed RDP, but denied the ICMP or the ping. So if we go back to, let's just check the network interface card for VM2, and then network setting, let's go to the network interface card, and then let's click on the effective security rule. And we should be able to see that now this network interface card has got RDP allowed by both NSGs, but ping is denied by the NSG2. So NSG2 is saying allow RDP, I should say actually, sometimes it just takes a second. Sorry, let me just go back to double check the config. NSG2 bound, yep, deny ping. Sometimes it just takes a second. We were too quick for it to. Yep, and now it says deny ping for NSG2, but allow RDP for NSG1, allow ping and allow RDP. So what does that mean? In this case, it should mean that for VM1, which did not have NSG2 associated with it, we should still be able to ping it and still be able to RDP to it. For VM2 and 3, we should still be able to RDP, but not ping. So let's test that. So this is VM1. Let's ping the IP address of VM1. Ideally, able to still ping it, which we do. Let's click on VM2. That's the IP address of VM2. So ping 20.11.0.104. Now, in this case, we are unable to ping it, which is good news. Let's click on VM3 and then try to ping it. Ping 20.11.41.201. So in both cases, we were unable to ping VM2 and 3, so that we know, at least we know that the deny ping is working. Let's see if we are still able to RDP to these three machines. So VM1, cool. We are still able to RDP to it, which is good news. Let's pick VM2. Again, we are still able to RDP to it. Again, good news. And then finally, let's click on VM3. And yeah, so as you could see here, we were able to be more specific when it comes to the security rule to specifically allow ping or ICMP toward one virtual machine and deny it toward the other, but still allow RDP to all our machines. Next, we'll see how we can simplify this process using what Microsoft is calling Azure Application Security Group. Let's see what is the motivation behind creating this service and how can we use it. So the network security group is really great when it comes to being a very simple tool to actually filter traffic based on the TCP and UDP port, but it still comes with a little bit of difficulty. So the first type of difficulty is that it becomes really hard to actually troubleshoot and understand the type of traffic. So if you've got multiple NSGs, you need to always be checking the effective security rule. You need to always check which network, for example, if network security group one is allowing a specific type of traffic, but it's not being allowed by network security group two, it's going to be a little bit confusing. So ideally, you should be able to have one network security group to actually control all type of traffic within your VNet and not have to worry about having a network security group for each specific resource or for each specific application type. In our case, our environment is really simple. We only have 3 VMs. But if an environment actually contains 20 VMs or like a complex type of application, one is a database type of virtual machine, one is a front web or like web app application. So the type of network security requirement becomes really complex, and then it becomes really difficult to create more and more network security group to apply only for specific workloads. So that's one of the approaches, one of the difficulties with NSGs. The other thing that I want to talk about, which we just talked about, is the compromise between flexibility and complexity. So NSGs is very simple, but if you want to have more flexibility, if you want to have more fine-grained control over your traffic, it becomes really difficult because if you want to have, say, like one NSG per subnet, that means you have to group workloads that have similar network security requirement in the same subnet, and that becomes limiting because now each type of workload that is, let's say, you want to allow ping and then deny ping and allow RDP and so on and so forth, you want to separate them into subnet, that becomes really difficult. And finally is the maintainability. In our example, we use any source and any destination for our policies, but that's not really good in real life. You need to specify the specific source and IP and specific source of a specific destination IP, sorry. So with NSGs, if you've got a new VM with so like each time you add a new VM that has a similar security requirement, as in like deny ping and then allow RDP, it doesn't matter if there is another security rule similar to it, you would have to create another one. That is a difficulty with maintainability because you'll have to add more and more security policies. So enter the application security group. So what Microsoft did to solve this problem, they solved it in a very genuine and smart way, which is to create a what is like almost like a label for workloads that have similar security requirement. So instead of you having to worry about IP addresses and like each time you add another machine, you want to add that create a specific security group that matches that machine within your network security group, you simply just add it to that application security group. And all the policies, security rules that are applied for that application security group would just apply to it. The one thing that I want to bring your attention to that the application security group is actually not a standalone tool. It's not like the network security group where you could add rules and then like inbound and outbound rules. It's just think of it as a label. So you'll get what I'm talking about in a second, but it's not a standalone group. It's just a label that you attach to a machine, and then when you create a security group, security rule, you would say that apply to this specific application security group. And the other also benefit that comes out of it is that now we have one network security group per the VNet, which is beautiful, because this network security group one is the same applied to both subnet, but we still have flexibility to say allow ICMP and RDP within the first security rule, and then the second security rule we say deny ICMP and then allow RDP. And this time, it is toward an application security group instead of an IP, and you don't have to be specifically creating another network security group and so on and so forth. And yeah, so without further ado, let's create our first application security group and see how is that going to help make our life easier. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is actually remove the association between network security group and the network interface card, create an application security group, and then we'll see how we can use it in NSG1. So let's go to network security groups. Let's go to network security group 2. And under the network interfaces where we associated to network interfaces, click on the first one, which is for VM2, and then disassociate. And then let's click on the network interface for VM3 and then disassociate. So what we did basically now, network security group is 2 is not applied to any virtual machine. It should take a while, or like a second or more, but let's check if that actually taken effect. Let's go to VM2 network setting. Yeah, and it's only had one NSG associated with it, which is awesome. Click on VM3, again, one NSG applied to it. So now we only have one network security group associated with both our virtual machines, with all of our virtual machines actually. Let's click on the search and then search for application security group. And let's click on this guy. That's one I prepared before. Doesn't matter. Let's create another one. And let's assign it to a network, resource group. Let's call it calendar. So let's give it a name, call it Festive Tech Calendar ASG, and then a region, review and create. And after that, we should be able to create. It will take a second for it to be created. Yeah, and as you can see here now, our application security group is ready. Let's go to the resource. And as you can see here, there's nothing that we could actually specifically configure here. So it's just a label. So to actually use the application security group, we go to the virtual machine that we want to associate with that application security group. Let's click on the VM. And then as you can see, under networking, there is actually a tab for application security group. Right now, it is not associated with any application security group. So let's change that, add an application security group, and we'll pick the Festive Tech calendar, or misspelled calendar, ASG in this case, and then let's add it. It'll take a second for it to update, successfully updated. And now let's go to VM3, again to application security group, add application security group, Festive Tech calendar, and then associate it to it. And by now, we have done nothing beside labeling VM2 and 3 as part of the Festive Tech calendar application security group. We have not worked, or like we have not added any specific configuration related to the applications security group. So let's go back to home and then click on the network security group 1, the one that we associated with both subnets. And in here, we see that we are saying allow ping, allow RTP to all workloads. But what we'll do is that in the inbound security rule, we'll add another one. And this time, instead of saying the destination is any, we'll say destination is the application security group. So, and in this case, we'll pick the Festive Tech calendar application security group. Service is, we'll leave it to custom. And then again, we'll pick ping. And in this case, we'll say deny, but we need to be careful that we need to give it a priority higher than the allow ping, because this security rule will technically allow any ping. So if we want to deny the ping, we should give it a priority higher. And in this case, we'll give it a priority of 100. And then we'll say deny ping to, let's just say deny ping, okay? So basically, we have associated this with an application security group of Festive Tech calendar from any source, protocol ICMP, deny, we gave it a priority 100, let's add it. So now what should happen is that for all our resources in VM, in subnet 1 and 2, VM 1 and 2 and 3, all now have one network security group that is applying all the rules, all from one place, but specifically, we still have the flexibility to say part of this group, part of these resources that are within VNet 1, within subnet 1 and 2, we've got what is called application security group. In this case, it's called Festive Tech calendar. That one has the deny ping. So in the future, if we've got another 10 more machines, we don't need to worry about coming back again to the network security group to apply or add in another network security rule. You just associate it with the application security group, and because it's part of the this application security group, this policy will apply to it. So that's the beauty of the application security group. And as you could see, within the application security group, we were not able to do anything. But because we associate it with VMs, now we can use it as a destination for our policies, or even as a source if you want to create an outbound security rule. So if we go back to our virtual machines here, if we go to VM2, we should be able to see that VM2 now is associated with this application security group, and VM3 should be also associated with this security group. So basically, we should not be able to ping VM1 and VM2 and 3, still be able to ping VM1, and still be able to RDP to all the machines. So let's find out what's the IP address of VM1. So let's ping. So again, ideally, we should be able to ping VM1, which is good. Let's try to ping VM2. Hopefully, we will not be able to ping it. So 20.11.0.104, not able to ping it. Good news. Let's click on VM3. And again, ping it. Ideally, we should not be able to. Yeah. So again, we were not able to ping VM203, so we know that part of the policy is working. Let's see if that affected our ability to RDP to those machines. So VM1 should not be affected. Yep, and as we could see, we are still able to RDP to VM1. Ideally, we should be able to RDP to VM2, which we still are able. Beautiful. And then finally, we should be able to RDP to VM3, which we are still able. So as you can see here now, with the application security group, our life becomes so much easier, but it is a tool that works in collaboration with the network security group. So to sum it up, a network security group, as you can see, it's a basic virtual firewall to block some ports that you want to block, and allow some network protocols to word your virtual machines or workloads within a VNet. And it's a basic, simple, there are just some things that you need to be mindful of, things like the priority, effective security group, and which policy is applied in the end on your workload. So with that, I hope you found this session really useful, and thank you for joining me in this festive tech calendar. Thank you again to Richard and Grigor, and see you in the next one. Bye.